Parts. Acceptable: all scaffolding components are free of fractures, corrosion, and deformation. Unacceptable parts are twisted, rusted, or have visible cracks which can compromise structural foundations. Acceptable: firm, level, and supported by base plates and mud sills. There are no symptoms of sinking or moving. Unacceptable: uneven terrain, no base plates or symptoms of sinking that jeopardize stability. Post standards. Acceptable: vertical and aligned posts secured with proper bracing. Unacceptable: misaligned, bent, or cracked posts without bracing support. Lifts, working platforms. Acceptable: platforms are level and firmly secured to the scaffold structure and they support the expected load. Unacceptable: loose, uneven platforms or platforms that lack sufficient support causing collapse. Lightweight coupler and tube. Acceptable: couplers that are placed correctly and are not loose or damaged. The tubes are in line. Not acceptable: visible wear, loose or missing couplers that result in unstable and weak joints. Medium duty. Acceptable: reinforced for heavier loads with adequate support and bracing. Unacceptable: insufficient reinforcement for large materials or equipment resulting in overload. Stability. Acceptable: fully braced scaffold with adequate tie-ins and anchorage. Unacceptable: scaffold sways or shows signs of instability due to insufficient bracing. Guardrail system. Acceptable: installed on all open sides with top rails between 950 mm 1150 mm and mid rails in place. Unacceptable: missing or damaged guardrails increasing the risk of falls. Platforms. Acceptable: properly secured planks with no gaps larger than 1 inch. Planks extend beyond supports by 6 to 12 inches. Unacceptable: gaps in planks, unsecured planks, or overloading the platform risking access. Acceptable: safe access with securely fastened ladders or stair towers. Access points are unhindered. Unacceptable: blocked or damaged access or a lack of safe entry to the platform posing a fall risk. Base plates and mud sills. Acceptable: base plates are level and provide a solid footing. Missing base plates or mud sills, which might cause ground settling or scaffold movement, are unacceptable. Load capacity. Acceptable: the load is evenly divided between platforms and posts. Weight does not exceed the scaffold's capability. Unacceptable: overloading the scaffold, particularly in concentrated points, resulting in potential collapse. Tie-ins and anchorage. Acceptable: scaffold tied to the structure at intervals according to height and exposure to wind. Unacceptable: scaffold lacks tie-ins, especially in high wind areas, risking toppling. Plank conditions. Acceptable: planks are free of fractures and splinters. Unacceptable: damaged or weaker planks which increase the risk of falling or breaking under weight. Bracing. Acceptable: diagonal and horizontal bracing is secure and keeps the scaffold stable. Unacceptable: missing or weakened bracing that causes the scaffold to swing or collapse under load. Weather conditions. Acceptable: scaffolding is employed in pleasant weather with no high winds or severe weather. Unacceptable: used during heavy winds, rain, or icy conditions, which increases the risk of slips and structural instability. Training and supervision. Acceptable: workers trained in scaffold assembly use and safety procedures. Unacceptable: untrained personnel using or assembling the scaffold, increasing the risk of accidents. Fall protection. Harnesses and lanyards are acceptable while operating above 10 feet or as required by local regulations. Unacceptable: there are no fall prevention mechanisms in place which violate safety guidelines. Inspection frequency. Acceptable: scaffolds are examined every day or after a major incident or weather situation. Infrequent or irregular inspections are unacceptable as they cause unnoticed wear or damage. Toe boards. Acceptable: installed on all platforms to prevent materials from falling. Unacceptable: missing or loose toe boards, increasing the risk of materials dropping on workers below. Ladder access. Acceptable: ladders are secured and provide safe entry and exit. Unacceptable: ladders are unstable or improperly attached, posing a falling hazard. Scaffold height. Acceptable: height is within the design limits and tied off at regular intervals. Unacceptable: scaffold exceeds height limits without tie-ins, increasing the risk of collapse. Base to height ratio. Acceptable base width is proportional to scaffold height, commonly 4:1 ratio for safety. Unacceptable scaffold height exceeds safe ratios, making it prone to tipping. Debris management. Acceptable platforms are clear of tools and materials when not in use. Unacceptable excess debris or tools left on the platform posing tripping or falling hazards. Scaffold movement. Acceptable scaffold is locked in place and does not shift during use. Unacceptable scaffold shows signs of movement or instability due to unsecured parts. Don't forget to subscribe Het Angbo YouTube channel.